فتعالى الله الملك الحق ولا تعجل بالقرآن من قبل أن يقضى إليك وحيه وقل رب زدني علما.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Amma ba'd. So last lesson then we were discussing the topic of hijama, cupping, whether cupping is allowed whilst you are fasting or not. And we mentioned in the end that there are two opinions about that. The majority opinion being that cupping does not break your fast, but there was a very strong second opinion, the opinion of Al-Imam Ahmad and others, that actually cupping does break your fast. The final thing we had to mention here, Sheikh Salih Al Fawzan حفظه ta'ala mentions المفطرات على قسمين. The things that break your fast are two types. The things that break your fast are two types. إما إدخال شيء إلى الجوف كالطعام والشراب ونحو ذلك, either by inserting something into yourself, into your stomach, like food, like drink. You take food and drink into yourself, into your stomach, then that obviously breaks your fast. But the second type of thing that breaks your fast is removing things from yourself. The first one was obvious, taking things in, eating and drinking, taking food and water in to your body breaks your fast. But the second thing is taking things out of your body. And what that means is, for example, like the period for the women. When the women are on the period, they are losing blood. Blood is coming out from them. That is being taken out. It is coming out. Similarly, in the postnatal bleeding, for the one who has given birth, then she is also losing blood. The blood is coming out. The same in hijama, blood is coming out. So in all of these instances, there are things, or in these cases, blood coming out of a person. And it doesn't just have to be blood, it could also be vomit. That a person vomits on purpose, we know that breaks your fast. In the case of vomiting, you are also bringing something out. So your fast can be broken by taking something in, or it can be broken by bringing something out. So they say, and they give the example of vomit. We're going to come to that hadith later. If you vomit on purpose, bring it out on purpose, it breaks your fast. So they say, when you bring things out of your body, then you are weakening your body. When you extract from your body, you are weakening your body. And that is not something suitable and appropriate to go along with fasting. With fasting, you are already becoming weak with a lack of food and water. So it is not befitting that you make yourself even more weaker by extracting blood, or by vomiting and extracting everything from your stomach, or by cupping and extracting blood from yourself. That is one of the points that they mention. That cupping just doesn't fit, and it isn't suitable and appropriate when you're fasting. That you are already in a state of weakness, and then to have the cupping done will increase your weakness. You are extracting blood out from yourself. And so they mention that as a supporting argument, as a reasoning behind their position that it is impermissible to have the cupping done whilst you are fasting. Regarding the blood there, so the woman who is on the period or the woman who is on the postnatal bleeding, they are obviously losing blood from themselves and they can't fast. But what about a person then losing blood? Does it break your fast? Meaning, is it haram? Could you, for example, give a sample of blood to the doctor whilst you are fasting during Ramadan? Or could you donate blood for somebody who requires it whilst you are fasting? Is it permissible to extract blood from yourself in that way whilst you are fasting? The scholars, they say, if it is a minor amount, the doctor needs to take a small syringe sample from you for some testing, that's no problem. A small syringe, a tiny amount is taken from you for a sample, that isn't going to weaken you, that isn't going to impact upon you. So that small amount being taken from you isn't something which breaks your fast or impacts upon your fast. But if the doctor needed some significant amounts, a large sample, then that would not be permissible whilst you are fasting. If it became a necessity, then you'd have to make up that day afterwards for removing such large quantities of blood from yourself. What about in the situation that there's an emergency? Some critical emergency occurs and they need blood and you're a match. So can you give blood for that critical emergency? Somebody could die, you're a match. Can you then allow them to take a significant amount of blood from you? Would that be permissible whilst you are fasting? What would be the ruling of your fasting in that critical emergency situation? It's allowed and it doesn't break your fast, or what?
It breaks your fast.
It's allowed but it breaks your fast. Alright? So in a critical emergency type of situation, then yes, of course it is allowed. You would give the blood, but to give that amount of blood, then you would need to make up your day afterwards. Because to extract that amount of blood, then according to many of the scholars, it's not correct whilst you are fasting. So in the case of the emergency, you have to do it, but then you would make up the day afterwards. What if you have an accident, and after the accident, or as a consequence of the accident, you lose a large amount of blood whilst you are fasting? You have some accident on your bike, on your car, and you lose a significant amount of blood before they take care of you at the hospital and fix you up, but you lost a significant amount of blood in the accident, and you were fasting, it was Ramadan, what's the ruling on that day now?
It'll be better for you to carry on fasting, so just break it and make that up.
Let's say you're okay. Forget about the burden on the person. What's the ruling on the day anyway?
Continue fasting.
Does it count or does it not? He's lost a big amount of blood in this accident. Does the day count or does it not count now, because you're back to the same ruling of extracting from your body, taking out from your body a huge amount of blood there? Why does it count?
It's based on choice.
Accident. Unintentional.
So that's it. The scholars, they mention in that type of scenario, the Sheikh says here, Sheikh Al Fawzan, you lost a significant amount of blood whilst you are fasting, but it was not by choice, it was some accident or something of that nature, then your fast is still valid and you continue. But the obvious difference between that and cupping is that cupping is by your choice. And this scenario is talking about something which is not by your choice. You had an accident and you lost a significant amount of blood, not by your choice, so your fast is still valid. But in the case of cupping, you've gone by choice to get the cupping done whilst you are fasting. That's your choice you made. So there's a difference in the ruling there. Then after that, we'll move on to the next hadith. And that is the hadith of Aisha radiyallahu anha. أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم اكتحل في رمضان وهو صائم. رواه ابن ماجه بإسناد ضعيف. قال الترمذي لا يصح في هذا الباب شيء. This is a weak narration where it is mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had or put on kohl on his eyes, around his eyes, the kohl, the black lining, the kohl, that he put on this kohl around his eyes whilst he was fasting. He put on the kohl upon his eyes whilst he was fasting. So now then, this issue arises regarding the kohl. Does it break your fast if you put it on whilst fasting, or does it not impact upon your fast? The Shaykh says, وضع الكحل في العينين أو وضع الدواء أو وضع القطرة في العينين. And the same general issue, not just kohl, but for example some medicine or eye drops. The topic here is, if you do something with your eyes, eye drops or kohl or something of that nature, then does it break your fast or not? Putting eye drops in, putting other medicines in, doing the kohl, do those types of things upon your eyes break your fast or not? The Shaykh says, هذا لم يرد فيه شيء. There is nothing authentic that is mentioned on that specific topic about something going into your eyes, like eye drops go right into your eyes. There is nothing mentioned specifically on this topic. The default in that case, the origin is permissibility, The origin and the default is permissibility. We can't make something haram without any evidence upon it. And al-asl al-ibaha. So the default is that it's allowable as a default position. لأن العين ليست منفذا تصل إلى الجوف, because the eye is not a direct inlet to the stomach. The eye is not a direct inlet to the stomach. So what you do with your eye by default would not be considered something that invalidates your fast. It's not an inlet into your stomach. So the default on this would be that it's allowed. And it's allowed to put the kohl on, and it would be allowed to use eye drops or other types of medication upon your eyes, because there is no text specifically on that issue prohibiting it. Nothing that talks about the eyes and the impermissibility of taking in drops, etc., for the eyes of any nature, of any medicine. The scholars do say though, even though the default in that case is that it's permissible, the scholars do say you should try and avoid it though. So if you don't need to take your eye drops during the day whilst you're fasting, you can wait till Maghrib, then you should wait till Maghrib. If you can wait, there's no necessity to take those eye drops during the day, then you should wait till the evening after Maghrib and then take them. That's what many of the scholars they say. One of the reasons which is noted and valid and experienced is that a person may take eye drops into his eyes and he experiences a taste in his throat. It does occur and it is known. So the scholars say generally it should be something avoided. To use eye drops or anything going into your eyes whilst you are fasting. But it is allowable if there was a need for it. A person needs to take those eye drops every 2 hours, 3 hours, then okay, it is allowed and it is permissible to take the eye drops under the situation of necessity. But otherwise, if there is no necessity, then in that case it is makruh. You should avoid eye drops and other things like that going into the eyes. Normally you should avoid that. What about then the nose drops? Now we just mentioned eye drops. What about nose drops? They are clearly impermissible, not permissible. And that is because the nose is obviously a direct inlet to the stomach. You take something in through your nose, it goes straight down your throat into your stomach. So because it is a direct inlet to the stomach, it's impermissible to take nose drops whilst you are fasting. The hadith in Abu Dawood and Ibn Majah and Tirmidhi and Nasa'i, it mentions بالغ في الاستنشاق ما لم تكن صائما, that you should, or إلا أن تكون صائما, that you should do your gargling, your rinsing of the mouth properly, deeply, normally when you make wudu, except when you are fasting. Then you don't rinse right in and start gargling all the way in because of the risk of swallowing something. So when you're fasting, you don't do that because of the risk of water going down. You do it lightly, the rinsing out of the mouth. So this is under that same situation when you suck something up into your nose, some type of drops go up into your nose, then there is a direct possibility of them going down into your stomach. Therefore, nose medication going into the nose, drops, etc., then that is not permissible when fasting. The only thing that remains now is the related issue to these things, often mentioned together, is the inhalers. Is it permissible to take the inhaler whilst you are fasting? So what's the ruling on inhalers?
If it's if it's an emergency, you can take it. It doesn't break your fast because it won't prevent your situation getting worse. You have to take the inhaler.
So you're saying taking an inhaler does not break your fast? You're sucking it in directly down, it doesn't break your fast. Anybody else?
It's not a nutritional benefit.
So breaks your fast or not?
It doesn't, because it doesn't benefit.
So you're saying as well it doesn't break your fast to take inhaler?
So I think you can.
No, but that means it doesn't have to fast. He's fasting.
But you can do the days after. Like,
So it breaks your fast, you're saying?
yeah, but you come back next
But it breaks your fast.
Yeah.
So you're saying it breaks the fast. The inhaler, many of the scholars, they've said it does not break your fast. Because they say the inhaler, it is basically air. Yes, of course, there are small, whatever you want to call them, there are small pieces in there, but it's basically air. There's no real solid food or any solid nutrition you could consider in the inhaler. So that inhaler doesn't provide any nutritional value in any way. When you inhale it in, you are taking that inhalation into your lungs anyway, not down into your stomach. So for various reasons like that, Sheikh Al-Uthaymeen, Sheikh Ahmed Al-Najmi and others have said, rahimahumullah, that inhalers do not break your fast. So they are permissible for those who need them during their fasting. Then we move on to the next hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من نسي وهو صائم فأكل أو شرب فليتم صومه فإنما أطعمه الله وسقاه. And this is a narration which is agreed upon, muttafaqun alayh, by Al-Bukhari and Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever forgets and eats or drinks whilst he's fasting, whoever forgets that he's fasting and eats or drinks, then let him continue and complete his fast. For indeed, that is Allah who has fed him and given him that drink. So this hadith is on the topic of eating or drinking forgetfully whilst you are fasting. Eating or drinking forgetfully whilst you are fasting. We know that food and drink, by consensus of the scholars, if you eat and drink on purpose, it breaks your fast. That is known by consensus of the scholars. If you eat and drink on purpose, then it breaks your fast. And Allah mentioned in the Quran, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ ثُمَّ أَتِمُّوا الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. That eat and drink until the black line becomes clear from the white line, and that we've spoken about before in the narration. It refers to the true dawn arising, meaning Fajr time entering. And then when that occurs, أَتِمُّوا الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ, then you must continue and complete your fasting up until the night, up until Maghrib, indicating therefore that you cannot eat or drink during the day, and you can only eat and drink during the night up until the true dawn arises. You can eat and drink during the night up until the true dawn arises. After that, eating and drinking invalidates your fast if done on purpose. فالأكل والشرب والجماع هذه الأشياء تفطر الصائم بإجماع أهل العلم إذا تعمدها. Eating, drinking, intercourse, if done on purpose, any of those things, if done on purpose, then by consensus of the scholars it breaks your fast. ولكن من أكل أو شرب وهو ناس. But now the issue in this hadith is, what if somebody eats or drinks? We're not talking about intercourse here, that's another ruling later. Whoever eats or drinks forgetfully, eats or drinks forgetfully, then the narration highlights that the person must continue fasting for the rest of the day and complete his fast, because that food which is eaten forgetfully or the drink that is drunk forgetfully does not impact upon his fast. It does not invalidate his fast. And the narration mentions, indeed it is Allah who fed him and gave him that drink. فَدَلَّ عَلَىٰ أَنَّ الصَّائِمَ إِذَا أَكَلَ نَاسِيًا أَوْ شَرِبَ نَاسِيًا أَنَّ هَذَا لَا يُبْطَلُ الصِّيَامِ. Therefore, somebody who eats or drinks forgetfully, genuinely, accidentally, forgetfully, then it does not break his fast. And Allah mentioned in the Quran, رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. Our Lord, do not hold us accountable if we forget or we make a mistake. And similarly in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَجَاوَزَ عَنْ أُمَّةِ الْخَطَأِ وَالنِّسْيَانِ وَمَا اسْتُكْرِهُ عَلَيْهِ. That indeed Allah has forgiven, pardoned and overlooked my ummah upon the mistake or the forgetfulness or what they were compelled upon. Mistakes, forgetfulness or compulsion, that Allah overlooks that. And it mentions how Allah has given that person this food and drink, i.e. Allah has given him that rizq, and he didn't mean it intentionally. He didn't mean to break his fast or eat on purpose. Rather, it was accidentally, it was forgetfully. And so in that case, his fast is still valid and he continues with it. In another narration, it even mentions وَلَا قَضَاءَ عَلَيْهِ, that there is no making up. He doesn't have to make up that day. In the version of Al-Hakim, مَنْ أَفْطَرَ فِي رَمَضَانِ نَاسِيًا فَلَا قَضَاءَ عَلَيْهِ وَلَا كَفَّارَ. whomsoever opens his fast during the day of Ramadan accidentally, meaning eats or drinks, then there is no making up the day. He does not have to make up the day, nor is there any expiation due upon him. The one who genuinely forgets and eats and drinks. The only thing the scholars do mention is that if you do eat or drink accidentally, then as soon as you remember, instantly, immediately you must stop eating and drinking what you have now been eating and drinking. You must instantly and immediately cease. If you do not, and you carry on and take another bite after you remembered, then your fast is broken. Or you swallow what was already in your mouth after you remembered, then your fast is invalid too. So imagine now you genuinely forgot and you were eating. And then as you are chewing your bite, you remember. But then you swallow that bite which is already in your mouth and it's chewed anyway. After you remembered. It went down your throat after the thought occurred to you. So now your fast is invalid. You have to get it out of your mouth and you have to get rid of it. Even if it's in your mouth and then you remember, stop, and even that has to be taken out. You cannot swallow it. So the point is, if you genuinely forget, it doesn't break your fast. But if you do genuinely forget, if you remember, when you remember, then immediately you must stop. Not a single bit more. Not even what is in your mouth can go down now. So that is regarding accidentally eating or drinking. Then after that, we come to the hadith of Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من ذرعه القيء فلا قضاء عليه ومن استقاء فعليه القضاء. That whomsoever is overcome by vomiting, then there is nothing upon him, he doesn't have to make up a day. But whomsoever makes himself vomit, then upon him is to make up another day. This narration now is talking about the topic of vomiting. And that is, of course, extracting what is in of your stomach within you, extracting that and removing it back out through your mouth, the vomiting. If this vomiting occurs itself, you are ill, you feel very bad, and all of a sudden the feeling gets so bad that you can't stop yourself, you vomit out. That's when a person is naturally sick or ill, has that feeling, can't stop himself, and it vomits out. That does not impact upon your fast. You were genuinely ill, you genuinely ended up vomiting, couldn't stop yourself, doesn't impact upon your fast. But if you're not feeling well and you have a lot of pain, a lot of anguish, and so you make yourself vomit to clear yourself out, maybe poking your mouth, or maybe smelling something disgusting, or looking at something that would disgust you, doing something with your senses that would then trigger the reaction of vomiting. Looking at something disgusting, smelling something disgusting can cause a person to vomit. So if a person purposely does some activity, desiring by it to trigger the action of vomit, and he vomits from his actions that have triggered it, then as he desired, then that does break his fast and he will have to make up another day. So in that case, he has extracted from his body. And remember we said two types of things break your fast, either inserting something in food and drink, or extracting something from it like your food and drink. Again, you vomit, extracting that out of your body. So that person, his fast in that case, it breaks, it's invalid, and so he will have to make up that day again. And that's why the Sheikh mentions again how the scholars, they say there are two types of things that impact upon your fast. One is taking things in, food and drink, etc. The other is extracting and removing things like vomit, like blood. So those are things that weaken your body and as a consequence are impermissible when fasting. That brings us to the end of that narration. The next topic is the topic of traveling, but that is a lengthier topic and it has two narrations that go with it in Bulugh Al Maram. So we'll begin with the topic of traveling whilst you're fasting next time. What's the ruling on your fasting? Is it even permissible to fast when you're traveling? The rulings of traveling and fasting, that's what we'll begin with insha'Allah ta'ala from the next session. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Any questions or anything else before we go?